Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here. So today, I know I haven't been posting that often recently. That's the real reason is I've been talking to some people at Bungie. I know it might look like oh little old me, but they've seen, at least some employee at Bungie has seen that, I've done a couple builds, so they were mentioning to me about some of the upcoming exotic changes. They plan for five exotics to be changed, and these are pretty major reworks. That's also part of the reason why Shadow Order has gotten delayed. As y'all kind of see, some of these exotic changes are quite massive. So, this is the information that I have gotten from Bungie themselves. Of course, I haven't gone over there physically, but they've of course, I'm not allowed to show any footage or anything, so I'm going to be using, of course, footage of how the exotic works currently and whatnot. So, on that note, though, it's also sorry to apologize. I'm a little bit under. Well, I'm having some voice issues, as y'all can probably hear. But now, keep in mind, some of these exotics that are getting changed, and like entirely getting changed, some of them are in the meta, some of them are not. So that's something to keep in mind as we go forward. Um, they also try to choose one exotic for each element. However, for some of them, they decided to replace an element with a more of a non-elemental exotic to be changed. Now, I don't know if they're planning on changing more than these five exotics for each Guardian class, but that's going to be kind of that. We're going to start with Titan, then we're going to move to Warlock, then we're going to move to Hunter. Now, the first exotic that is getting changed is Wishful Ignorance. Now, I know that might be crazy. It might be like, wait, but Wishful Ignorance has already gotten a major buff. Why are they touching this again? Um, the reasoning. So first off, let's go into what the exotic perk does now. The exotic perk is Wish Dragon's Talons. Gain an additional Frenzy Blade charge. Frenzy Blade and Flechette Storm briefly increase their damage with each strike. Pulses from your banner of war return melee energy based on the number of allies healed. Now now this is an addition change. So I am going to specify here which change is an addition and which change is an entire rework. Every single Guardian class has at least one exotic that's getting entirely reworked. So, but this one is an addition. When gaining a melee charge, also gain Woven Mail. This is for gaining a melee charge. This is not for actually using it up. The main reason for this is Flechette Storm does not have a super duper easy build to get Woven Mail unless you build into Orbs of Power and whatnot. So they wanted to give just a little bit of extra juice in terms of, okay, you gain a Woven Mail so that you're just not constantly sitting on 4 stacks of melee charge. They might change this to be consumption, but this one is one of the ones they haven't quite honed in on as well quite yet, especially as nearly as some of the other exotics. Now, the next exotic that is getting handled is Path of the Burning Steps. Path of the Burning Steps right now does increase the damage for solar weapons in a solar conditions based on the amount of Roaring Flame stacks that you have. You're harder to suspend, slow, or freeze, and when you break out, you take no damage from doing so, creating a burst of solar energy around yourself. So, they're changing this to be, they're changing the second half of it. The second half. The first half, the increasing solar damage weapons is, that's still being kept. The you are harder to suspend, slow, or freeze, that is being changed to where it takes faster, it takes less time to break out of stasis, and you take no damage for doing so. But they are also adding creates sunspots when sprinting. Like essentially think of it as, as a fire trail. Frequency and duration of the flames increases with roaring flames. Um, Meaning that, so instead of, let's just say you gain a sunspot for every 4 or 5 steps, at times 3, you leave a sunspot in your trail for every step, so you leave a trail of sunspots. At times 3, also gain a speed boost buff. The speed boost buff. So that's where Path of the Burning Steps is going to be. Now, the next exotic is going to be Kairos of the Falling Star. I know this one is like, why did they need to get changed? This is already meta. This is one of the exotics that is getting an entire rework for Titan. There is going to be one more that is going to be getting a whole rework, but I know y'all are going to agree that that exotic needs a rework. But Kairos of the Falling Star is getting reworked entirely. The perk right now states greatly increases your Thunder Crash damage and grants you damage resistance after impact. Melee final blows while amplified gives you super energy. By the way, currently the greatly increases super damage is actually no. It's kind of like a more of a slightly to moderately increases the super damage. This exotic's getting an entire change. So the rework here is Ballistic Slam can now be aimed horizontally. Instead of just having to aim it downward, you can aim it from side to side now. You have a lot. They're spreading the cone of which you can aim the Ballistic Slam, which is so that it operates more as a mini Thunder Crash and not just, as a downward thing, which is quite cool. Also, it will not require you to be in midair to activate. It will just require you to sprint. Just for some, and just more of a quality of life thing. Now, with this exotic, you gain a second Thunder Crash charge. Now, here's the thing. Both Thunder Crashes are going to deal less damage. They're going to deal less damage than the normal Thunder Crash. And it's not going to be half damage, but it's going to be about 60% damage. The second hit deals more damage than the first, assuming that you land it on the same target. So the overall damage of it is going to be higher. But sort of think of it as Mobius Quiver. Think of it as Mobius Quiver on Void Hunter. Think of it as sort of like that. But if you hit that second Thunder Crash on the same target, that second one is going to do a lot more damage than the first. So overall the damage is going to be higher, but you do have a second Thunder Crash charge there. However, if you land it on two separate targets, the damage is going to be less. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, that is how Kairos of the Falling Star is getting reworked. Now on to Hoarfrost. Hoarfrost Z, the Stasis Titan chest armor. This is getting an addition. But currently, the perk, Glacial Fortification, while you have a Stasis Super equipped, your barricade becomes a wall of stasis that slows nearby targets when created. Standing behind this barricade will grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. By the way, Rally Barricade already does that. But this is getting an addition. You are able to pick up parts of the barricade and throw them at enemies. Now, keep in mind, I do have a sheet that I'm going off of notes-wise, because I was allowed to take notes. But, the barricade is split into three parts. The two columns on the side, and then the middle. The middle is going to do less damage. Generally speaking, you're not going to want to really do that. But you can interact with the left side or the right side, pick it up, and throw it at an enemy. When it's thrown at an enemy, if the enemy's already frozen, it will shatter that, and it will do extra shatter damage. So that's part of the reason why you might want to throw it there. It'll shatter them and refreeze them. If the enemy is not already frozen, it will freeze them, shatter it. Again, shattering will do that extra damage, and then it will not refreeze. So let me reiterate that. If the target's already frozen and you throw that barricade, it'll shatter, then refreeze. If the target is not frozen, it will freeze first, then shatter. So, there's that. That is the addition of Hoarfrost Z. Now, on to Helm of Saint 14. This one is getting an entire rework. Bungie has kind of stated that this exotic has really kind of struggled to find a meta spot, and more specifically, Bubble as a whole has struggled to be meta for a very, very, very long time. Now, right now, the Starless Night perk targets that enter Ward of Dawn are blinded, while allies that pass through gain a weapon damage bonus. Guarding with Sentinel Shield blinds nearby targets. This is actually getting reworked entirely. But including the Guardian with Essential Shield blinds nearby targets that is getting removed, because it doesn't serve any utility. Now, the rework. Bubble is now mobile and can be shot through. Overshield, weapon damage, and super generation is increased while in the bubble. Not for you, but for other people. Super's duration depend. Okay, that part is no, but bubble is so yeah. What's gonna kind of happen is when you cast bubble, keep in mind you will be stuck in the bubble animation. You will not be able to do any damage of any sort. Keep in mind that there is a caveat to this, but you're basically holding it. You're basically holding it in a way. That's why my note says super duration depends on how long the super button is held for. That ties into something a little bit different. But you hold it. Well, the super animation is held, cannot deal any damage. But the damage bonus of super generation that everybody else gets is not small. It's not small. So it is going to be worth it. And you can shoot through it. Now, the thing about holding it. If you cast your super button again, you will actually consume your own bubble, and it will be applied to only you. You will gain sort of a buffed up overshield, essentially. Think of it as a buffed up overshield, but when you consume it, nobody else will be able to get that buff. Period. You are going to be the only one that has that buff. Except for and you will not be able to have the super generation, so that overshield and that weapon damage is massively increased. The weapon damage is massively increased. You have an increased weapon damage, even more so than the buff you're giving your allies. However, your super meter is going to go down a lot faster. So think of it as sort of a meter, as like a bar meter. It doesn't run super fast when, you're just normal bubble. When you consume it, it goes by a lot faster. So that is, honestly, I think that's a really, really solid change. Now, that's all for the Titan changes. Let me know what y'all think of those Titan exotic changes in the comments below. Let me know, which exotic are you most excited for? In my personal opinion, I honestly think Helmetstain 14 is a super exciting change. I think being able to hold it is going to be super useful for, bubble, for like team play and whatnot. And then, even for solo play, bubble will actually have a use in terms of turning you into the bubble. So I think those is a pretty solid, nice change. And also the Curse of Star Ballistic Slam change, pretty good. Now, moving on to Warlock. Now, Warlock, the first exotic we're going to hit is going to be a rework. And that's going to be the Stag. The Stag, I know some of y'all might be like, well, this isn't... Keep in mind, some of these exotics do, like, Bungie believes they do need reworks. Some of these exotics, they don't need reworks. Now, the Stag right now, Dearly Departed. Your Rift provides damage reduction to allied guardians standing in it. Grants Rift energy when you are critically wounded. On your death, create a healing rift on your corpse. This is getting reworked. So that now, casting Rift gives subclass specific buffs. Strand gives Woven Mail. Void gives Overshield. Arc will actually give bolt charge. The longer you're in the healing rift, of course. Solar will give restoration, that sort of thing. More like survivability buffs. When you die, throw out an elemental decoy based on your equipped super that aggroes enemies. So what this kind of means is when you perish, it is, by the way, part of the original perk is going to be kept, aka grant rift energy when you're critically wounded. It will still grant that for you. But because Bungie took some of these stag ideas from the Wendigo, so you're casting out your body essentially. So, and also this makes it a lot safer for Guardians to revive you. So it'll throw out a decoy similar to the Strand Hunter aspect. I forget what it's called, but similar to that Strand Hunter aspect. However, it's So, for example, the Strand one will launch Threatlings. The Stasis one will throw out Cold Snap grenades in a way. They're similar. They're a little bit smaller Cold Snap grenades, but yeah, they throw out little Cold Snap grenades. The Solar one will explode, causing all targets to get scorched. The Arc one will blind all enemies when it perishes, and then the Void one will cause all the targets to become suppressed. So, that sort of thing. Now, and then it does draw enemy aggro, so again, that helps teammates revive you. But once it's gone, it's gone. And the stack has a particular way of, that's a little too much information for right now. Now, that is the only exotic. Well, Another exotic's going to be getting a major rework, but for now, the rest of these exotics for Warlock are going to be more so additions than anything else. And the next exotic is going to be Wings of Sacred Dawn. Currently, it's intrinsic perks called Tome of Dawn, but while you have a solar super equipped, aiming weapons while you're midair suspends you there for a short time. While this effect is active, you are more resistant to incoming damage and commands are less accurate. Weapon hits extend this effect's duration, and solar final blows provide restoration and reload your other weapons from reserves. Provides a large benefit to airborne stat. Whatever. No one cares what the airborne effect is a stat. Now, this is just getting an addition. During your super, basically, not during during Dawnblade. I don't know why I blanked on the name of that super for a minute. But during Dawnblade specifically, it will fire 6 helium-like projectiles. However, they're not going to, when they fire off, they're not going to split into mini ones. It will only be one projectile. It will not split off into 4. Like Ilion does with the exotic or whatever. But they will fire from the Guardian's back, and it will track. It's kind of light track. I think it's similar to Eyes of Tomorrow, but not as strong as OG Eyes was. Enemies killed during the super extend the super's duration. So there's that. Instead of the weapon hits, will extend the Tomb of Dawn effect, while this will extend the super's effect. Because the idea here is that you're kind of a plane. You're kind of a combat plane just flying around a bit. So that's kind of the idea there. A minor change, but honestly, kind of nice. Kind of nice. Now, Geomags. Geomag Stabilizers is the next exotic. By the way, Bungie did try to choose at least one exotic in every single slot outside of class item. So this would result in some multiple types being collected. For Titans, it was 2 chess pieces. For Warlocks, it's going to be 2 helmets, and for Hunters, is going to be 2 chest pieces. But for Geomag Stabilizers, currently, the intrinsic perk Close Enough, damaging targets with Chaos Reach extend its duration. Collecting Ionic Traces grant you energy for Chaos Reach. Sprinting while near max Bolt Charge grants stacks over time. The addition to this gives Chaos Reach a stackable damage buff that is consumed when charging the super. Stacks are obtained by depositing Bolt Charge on any target. So, yeah. I know the description doesn't sound as insane, but it's gonna be under a different name. The name of the perk might change, but you're going to be getting a buff. It goes up to ×3. So, as you know how the Destiny community called Chaos Reach, at least a decent amount of them called the Chaos Reach the Kamehameha, so to speak. They're kind of leaning into that idea here, but at ×3, you're able to charge Chaos Reach, and the damage buff is quite significant, especially at ×3. But you can choose to only consume one stack or 2 stacks, or you can go the big 3, and it'll launch the big beam at the target. And those stacks are only obtained by depositing that Bolt Charge. You do have to kind of lean into Bolt Charge a little bit for this. Of course, there are plenty of ways to gain Bolt Charge, so it shouldn't be that hard to build up 3 stacks. But it changes Chaos Reach from more like a sort of like a clear type deal. It really leads into the final move and big boy damage. So, and my charging the super does not cut the duration off. This is more so in addition to everything else that is there. So yeah, that is a change to Geomax Stabilizers. It's going to behave more like a Kamehameha, but I think that's pretty cool, having a chargeable super that deals extra damage. And it will not consume the super's duration. The caveat, the trade-off here is that you're spending more time in the super's animation, so that it pays off when you actually cast it. Alright. But that's going to do it for Geomag Stabilizers. And the next exotic getting changed is Ozymancy Gloves. Right now, Ozymancy Gloves, the intrinsic perks called Fervid Cold Snap. Your Cold Snap grenades have an additional charge that recharges quicker on hits. the Seeker spawn from Cold Snap grenades travel further. It's getting an addition. It's going to affect the Stasis Warlock Super. Keep in mind, a decent amount of these were affecting the Super or the Melee in some way, shape, or form. So that's why it's kind of taking a little bit more time for it to come out and shout in order. Now, Ozymandias Gloves. The additions. The Stasis Super is changed to launch Cold Snap grenades that destroy Stasis Crystals in its path with a light attack. Launch Stasis Crystals with a heavy attack similar to Cryoclasm. Which I believe Cryoclasm is the, by the way, Cryoclasm, I'm pretty sure is the Stasis Tine Uppercut one that launches a path of Stasis Crystals forward. So, but it also might be called Hollow of the Storm. I don't remember which one it is. I remembered it as Cryoclasm, so that's why I wrote Cryoclasm there. But yeah, so, and the reason for this is, you know, Stasis Warlock Super is kind of alright. But essentially, how the animation kind of works is, with the heavy attack with the staff, you wave the staff forward in sort of like an arcing motion in front of you, and it'll launch a wave of stasis. The energy itself is going to look like similar to the Stasis Aerial Denial Frame Grenade Launcher. It's going to look similar to that. But it will spawn little stasis crystals across the path. Now, the Cold Snap grenades, they're kind of more so souped up versions of Cold Snap grenades. That is the light attack now. So instead of just thrusting the staff forward and freezing, you throw out a souped up version of the Cold Snap grenade that will launch forward and, say, for example, you're fighting a boss or whatever. With a heavy attack, you spawn those stasis crystals, you Cold Snap grenade. The Cold Snap grenade on the way to the boss will destroy and the stasis crystals in its path, and then freezing the target and snapping it. Well, I forget what it's... Well, I don't know why I said snap. That's the strand perk. It'll shatter that target, and then, you know, you can freeze again. Throw Cold Snap. Freeze again. Cold Snap. That's kind of the loop there. But you can also spam Cold Snap grenades by just absolutely freeze, shatter, freeze, shatter, freeze, shatter, freeze, shatter. We're not going to be getting that damage from the chase crystals and whatnot. So, those are the changes to Ozymandias Gloves. It's more so, it's going to start affecting your super now, and the light attack is going to be a souped up version of Cold Snap Grenade. Now, the final exotic for Warlock is Skull of Dire Ahamkara. Now, this one I am super excited about. Now, the current perk, called Actual Grandeur, provides additional damage resistance during Nova Bomb. Nova Bomb final blows and weapon final blows while you have Devour against super energy. That's still up. So the second half of that is getting changed. Well, besides, the Nova Bomb final blows is being kept, but the weapon final blows while you have Devour is not being kept. But the rest of it, the provide additional damage resist during Nova Bomb, is still going to be kept. Now the addition. Still gives damage resist while doing Nova Bomb, but Nova Bomb and Void melee kills will grant a random wish. Now, keep in mind, the Nova Bomb kill buffs are going to be kind of like identified as a major wish, and while the Void melee kills, it has to be a Pocket Singularity. That's just in case they have a different Void melee at some point. But it has to be with a full charge of Pocket Singularity. The kill has to be with that. However, I will say the damage is going to be increased by that particular melee. While you have the Scout to kind of help it out a little. Well, they're increasing the damage overall, but it's mostly to help out this exotic. Some examples here. For the Nova Bomb, refunds 3/4 of your super immediately. Keep in mind, only one wish will be active at a time for these major ones. And say, for example, you can't get like you can't get 3/4 and immediately get it again. There will be a cooldown between each wish. But you either get 3/4 of your super back, grants an enhanced Devour, so it essentially will increase the regen rate of your abilities, but also it'll give you more health back when you kill enemies while you have Devour and whatnot. The duration is going to be the same as a usual Devour, though. And then Grant gives an overshield lasting 5 seconds. Now, the Void melee ones are considered to be minor. The Pocket Singularity ones are considered to be more minor ones. But minor weapon damage buff. Enemies explode into confetti. That's more of a cosmetic one. Gives player a hat. and then Void Melee gives a random debuff. So your Void Melee could. And by the way, these ones last for durations. So like the my weapon damage will last for a certain duration. So giving a certain status debuff, it will give it a certain duration. But I thought this was a really cool idea. You're essentially being rewarded for using your abilities and the bones of the Ahamkara you're wearing are granting you wishes based on the amount of kills that you get. Well, there's so much you get kills with and whatnot. So I think this is a pretty cool idea. I think this is the coolest exotic change probably. But that's for Warlock. Let me know in the comments below what the exotic you are most excited for in terms of change. In my opinion, I have to say Geomax Stabilizers. Geomax Stabilizer with Skull of Dire Ahamkara is up there as well. Now, on to Hunter. Now, Hunter, I'm gonna be honest, y'all are getting some decent changes. Y'all actually have 2 reworks. Something to keep in mind, Titans had 2 reworks, Warlocks had 1 rework, but let's be real, those additions are crazy. And one of them is a half rework. Skull of Dire Ahamkara. So Warlock basically has 1.5. Hunter has 2. Now the first change is going to be to Wormhusk Crown. Mainly because Wormhusk Crown doesn't do that much besides the healing. Now, the exotic perk is called Burning Souls. The intrinsic perk, Dodging, gives a small health and shield bump. That's it. Now, the addition is quite major. Bungie is introducing a new sort of weapon type identifier that they're calling Necrosis. They're not the same as the Weapons of Sorrow. I have to clarify that they are not the same as the Weapons of Sorrow. There are some weapons that are included in this that are not identified as Weapons of Sorrow. But some of the examples include, by the way, weapons that count as Weapons of Sorrow currently, they are going to count as both. But some of these examples include Whisper of the Worm, Touch of Malice, Necrochasm, and Parasite. Now, Burning Souls gives a stackable buff that increases healing that increases with weapon hits. Like, not the healing itself, but like the buff Burning Souls itself, because it is going to be stackable, that you're going to be able to gain those stacks on enemy hits. However, the healing will require enemy kills. However, you will also get the heal when you dodge as well. Again, it's going to be the base heal is going to be reduced when you dodge though, so that's something to keep in mind. It's going to go up to ×3. So ×2, think of it, the ×2 Burning Soul healing is going to be equivalent to where Wormhusk is at right now. So, I mean, a lot of times it's going to be a little bit weaker than it is right now, and ×3 is going to be a little bit stronger. Now, along with that, at max stacks, Burning Souls will be consumed, all 3 stacks, will be consumed to launch a kinetic explosion that leaves a pool of damage in its wake. This is going to be, it's going to do like a kinetic burn and kinetic tremors at the same time. Think of it like that, but it'll leave a pool at the enemy. See, the pool is not that small. It's about the size of Witherhoard. So yeah, it's not going to do an absolute ton of damage, but it's going to be quite nice for an extra layer of damage. Especially, I mean, if you combine this with something like Whisper of the Worm, or if you get max stacks or something like that, and then you have Parasite. Launching that Parasite is going to be insane. Now, for Parasite specifically, you will gain stacks for gaining Worm's Hunger. So that's something to keep in mind. Because obviously, you can't exactly act clear with Parasite. So yeah, however, when you're at max stack, when you get to ×20 for Worm's Hunger, you will no longer be gaining Burning Souls. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, there's Wormhusk Crown. Honestly, quite a goated change. Also, it will increase the weapon's shot in particular. That one shot will also get its damage increased, but no other shot. Again, this is going to struggle a little bit with the weapon like Necrochasm, but again, with Necrochasm, you're ad clearing and gaining that health is going to be kind of insane with that weapon in particular. Okay, so our next exotic change is going to be an addition, and that's going to be Shards of Galanor. Shards of Galanor, right now, they want to lead into the Blade Barrage specifically a little bit more, and that whole thing. Now, Sharp Edges, it's a perk right now. Throwing Knife Final Blows decrease the cooldown of your super. Hits and Final Blows of Blade Barrage will return super energy after the super ends. Now, keep in mind, Throwing Knife is now not going to be counted for all versions of the Hunter Throwing Knife. So you kind of have to make a decision here. Knife Trick is not going to be counted as a throwing knife for this one, but the rest of them will be. That's something to keep in mind, and y'all will understand why in a second. Now, Shards of Galanor. The addition gives a buff that briefly increases damage and super generation from glaives and swords, specifically. It's leaning into more of the bladed thing. He will also gain a brief period of damage resistance while exiting your super. But yeah, you'll be getting bonus damage and super generation from glaives and swords. Landing hits with Knife Trick extends the effect based on the number of the blades hit. That's why it's going to be a little bit different. Because that buff is going to last a little bit longer. It's going to add about 3 seconds to the buff's duration. Well, about a blade for, well, you know what I mean? It's at max, it's 3 seconds. If you hit about half of them, it's 2. If you hit only one of them, it's 1. You know what I mean? So the max is, it'll extend it by 3 seconds. That is going to be quite big for something like this. So essentially, the idea here is that you Blade Barrage. Let's say you like use Lament or something. You Blade Barrage, use a Lament combo, Knife Trick, use a Lament combo, and then you should be at around 3/4 of your super back. If you have hit absolutely everything, and you even did the, let's say you do something with tick damage, you do an Aerial Denial Frame, then Lament combo, then Knife Trick, you should be able to super again a second time, and then do that combo again. So yeah, that's kind of the loop there. Meanwhile, with Knife Trick, you can play a little bit more distance. You don't have to lean into necessarily the sword aspect. And by the way, this does work with glaive projectiles. So what you could do here is Blade Barrage, do the glaive projectiles, throw your throwing knife, glaive projectiles some more. However, do keep in mind you will not be able to gain. It will not extend the duration of it. So that is something to consider here. But yeah, Knife Trick, very, very solid. I think this is a very, very solid change for Shards. Well, in addition for Shards of Galanor. Now, the next exotic that's getting changed is Raiden Flux. This is going to be our last addition. The other 2 exotics are going to be reworks. Now, Raiden Flux. Right now, the perk is called Synapse Junctions. And quick successive attacks with Arc Staff increase its damage output and duration. All it does. Now, the addition is hits with Arc Staff now grant stacks of Bolt Charge. Also, you will be able to deposit stacks of Bolt Charge with the Arc Staff. Taking melee damage from enemies now blinds and jolts them. Gain super energy when this occurs. So you actually gain a little bit of super energy when an enemy melee hits you. That's it. I think simple, nice, pretty solid change to make, Raiden Flux just a little bit better. Now the rework. The 2 reworks. We're going to start with Frosties. Now, Frosties right now, Jojo perk is called Rapid Cooldown. Increase grenade melee and dodge generation while sprinting. Dodging increases your sprint speed. Keep in mind the perk name is also going to be getting changed. Now, the rework is you gain a second dodge charge when Shatter Dive is equipped. Increase radius and damage of Shatter Dive. Sprint speed is increased when you have Frost Armor. This is pretty big. Because I will say it didn't make any sense for an exotic to be called Frost, Frost to not, deal anything with stasis. So Bungie has decided to make it work with stasis a little bit more. And Shadow Dive doesn't exactly have a true exotic. I will say this is going to be kind of, this might be a little bit more of a nicher exotic choice. But, I mean, if you're a speedrunner here, you can use the Shadow Dive for damage and speedrunner can still have plenty of charges. So yeah, this could be quite insane. And having a second dodge is honestly kind of quite nice a little bit. So yeah, this is more so getting geared towards being the Shadow Dive exotic. More so than, just being a general sprinting exotic. while still keeping its sprinting increase when you have Frost Armor. Now the next rework I'm excited for, and that is Gwizzin Vest. Now, Gwizzin Vest. Right now, and as Roving Assassin, each Spectral Blade hit or final blow you make before becoming invisible restores some of your super energy. Exiting invisibility while near a target creates a cloud of weakening smoke around you. This is getting entirely reworked. Now, first things first. Now it just requires kills to get some super energy back. But increases Spectral Blade's damage flat out and causes targets to become volatile when hit. Also, keep in mind, Hunter already has some stuff built in terms of dealing with debuffs and whatnot to turn you invisible, so there's all that jazz. But yeah, it increases the Spectral Blade's damage flat out. It's about 70% damage increase. It's about a 70% damage increase. And volatile is quite nice. However, the big thing here is it changes your melee to launch a spectral knife that pierces through enemies, and each target's pass through is weakened and suppressed. And by the way, it does do quite a bit of damage. It does do quite a bit of damage as well. For example, it's going to just straight up kill thralls and like a lot of the weakest enemies. It's just going to kill them outright. It will apply the weaken first. But like the beefier targets, throw that shit. Throw that shit. Now, but you haven't quite decided yet to give it a second charge or not, because it feels a little bit broken currently, at least based on their testing. But yeah, this is a pretty big change for Gwizzin Vest. And yeah, that damage buff to Spectral Blades when it's equipped is going to be quite nice. So yeah, and also the Spectral Knife, think of it as it is basically a throwing knife. It's gonna have a slightly different animation as well, so that is something to think about. Now, in the comments below, let me know which exotics changes you are most excited for Hunter. In my opinion, I think I have to say Warmusk Crown. Having that Necrosis weapons is so kid, or that Necros, or whatever, however you pronounce it. That new class of weapons is going to be so cool, and then the Swords of Galador change is going to be quite fantastic as well. I don't know though. Out of the Guardian class, I think I'm most excited for maybe Warlock. But even though that bubble change is so huge as well. But yeah, let me know what y'all think of these changes in the comments below. Which Guardian class are you excited for in terms of the changes? Let me know what y'all think of them in the comments below. Give me what are your top 3 favorite exotic changes in here. Anyway, so on that note, though, thanks for tuning in. Now we'll catch y'all on the flip side.